was driving home, it'd just been a normal day at work. I was going to Pets at Home actually because it was my dog's birthday the next day. So yeah, I was off to buy him presents.
From Scarborough towards York, I was loading a load of fertiliser to tip on a farm on the other side of Morpeth. I remember exactly that route.
Fairly busy traffic, but nothing out of the ordinary for that time of day, kind of 5:30, 6 o'clock.
I remember when I came to the junction M1 from York. After a few good miles, I remember the orange lights on saying congestions on junction 61, I think it was. I've seen this all the time, and on those roads in Britain, and you know there's an accident, there's a breakdown, there's a damage, or police activity or recovery activity, something.
Just before the slip road is when I could see the big queue of traffic ahead. Looked in my rearview mirror to make sure the cars that I could see were slowing down.
It was probably less than a second when...
Looked ahead, and then the next thing it was just...
Emergency.
Multiple requests for police and fire.
Get back! A truck is ran into a load of stationary vehicles.
And it just didn't stop.
There is 2 lorries, 4 cars.
Smashed up to pieces and it's on fire.
Jesus Christ.
It's northbound, but the truck's on the southbound carriageway and I don't think the driver's out the cab.
Right, listen, we're getting fire and ambulance trucks, all right?
I could just hear that kind of metal crunching kind of sound, and that was one of those moments where you're just like, I can't move, I can't get out of this. You've just got to sit and watch it happen. And
I was holding the steering wheel so hard because the cup snapped. And the next thing, somebody was shouting, are you there? Are you all right? Because you need to get out. So they were kicking the wagon screen with their legs.
like an alarm was going off in my car, and I could just see all the chaos around me. Like there was the lorry was on fire, and then there was all the debris that was on fire around me as well. And I remember like looking around and thinking, this is what you see in films. This isn't real life.
I was desperate to come out the window. Like I seen a hand coming through, and they grabbed my hands and they pulled me through the broken glass. I seen the fire, so we ran away because they asked me what's in the trailer, and I said it's fertilizer. I was screaming to people to run away from the truck, and then just a few seconds after that, it exploded or caught a serious fire. I was positive somebody died because I knew there was a car underneath my wagon. I knew that.
I've got about 10 999 calls coming in for the A1M northbound. 1 lorry on fire and a 5-car crash at Bolburn by the looks of it.
Yes, doing a full closure on top of 61.
Yes. Stop. Northbound and southbound between 60 and 62, total closure.
LA received.
It was fairly apparent from the number of calls that we got and from the tone of voice from the comms operators how serious this was.
I was travelling southbound on the A1, and in the distance I saw a big plume of black smoke.
Is it going to be a bad one? Are there going to be people who have died there, seriously injured? I'm going to have to treat these people. And when you see fire and smoke and what have you, you know you're going to a bad one, unfortunately.
The first thing was the heat coming from the fire, like nothing I've ever experienced, like opening an oven door. There was multiple vehicles smashed up, spun round.
There's a HGV on its side and it was on fire, and there were at least 3 or 4 of the cars which were completely wrecked.
329, the lorry under 61 is full of fertiliser. They've been advised we're going to need 300 to 400 metre perimeter.
Get people away! Fertiliser! Start turning round and try and get off there.
And as I approached the Hilux, an off-duty doctor told us already that the gentleman inside was deceased.
Elliot, just to confirm, there's a paramedic here on scene, army I believe, and there is somebody deceased inside a vehicle.
Everyone clear away, there's still a risk of further explosion.
As I walked closer, kind of seen, unfortunately, blood and body parts on the road as well, and given the number of vehicles involved and how bad it was, preparing yourself for the worst in relation to it being more people dead than just the one.
Jesus Christ.
LA 327. Given the gravity and the size of this scene, I'd suggest we call out additional accident unit, because it's literally like a bomb's gone off.
There were lots of people who were in the road at the time, and it was clear that not many people knew what they needed to do. So we're prioritising people who are injured and make sure everyone from the vehicles that have been damaged are accounted for in one way or another.
Right, these need checking to this.
The cars, I'm happy there's nobody in these two cars. I'm concerned about the cab of the tipper.
Right, there's a driver up there.
Okay.
Can I leave you? We'll locate.
Check, good news, the driver of the silver wagon on fire is...
been located as well.
Yeah, we see LA intercept, so at the minute just one deceased.
At that time I thought that's all it was, the one fatality.
Just for the log, we're going to have to disturb the wreckage just to ensure that there's no one else in there, and I'm being told that there is a second fatality at the scene.
To be totally honest, it wasn't till some time after that I was made aware that there were actually two people in that car. It was crushed beyond all recognition is the best way I can describe it. And
that's gone into another private motor vehicle. Okay,
right.
We can see at least 2 obvious fatalities. That's a minimum of 2 in that one.
Right.
Minimum, right?
Because of the fire in the lorry, you couldn't see that there was another car sort of in the fireball. You couldn't see that. I think it was once the fire brigade had put out the fire, that's when it became clear.
Yeah,
there's 2 deceased that are badly burned. Definitely deceased. Maybe more in the vehicle that's been hit by the heavy.
Tell you what we're dealing with. Can I please declare this now a major incident? LA 327.
Yes.
Confirm accident unit have been contacted, please. Absolute carnage down here.
Yes, yes.
We had lots of us working on the detail of trying to find out what vehicle had set on fire, who was in it, and ultimately how many people were in it.
But he thinks there's a passenger and he thinks there's a driver, but that passenger may have come from the back seat, it's unclear. He's trying to get ahead and tail of the car because the only recognisable bit's the engine block. I'm trying to think of where a VIN number might be that's not been destroyed to try and get a registration.
Stays the deceased dog here as well in the carriageway in lane 2 on the northbound. Possible causation, obviously not confirmed at the minute.
Laid in the road was a family pet, and we used the chip in the dog's neck to start the ball rolling, and ultimately we got a home address from that. We'd been able to establish that Elaine and David weren't where they should be, and that's when we knew it was likely to be them. And we couldn't say that. And how do you go to someone's family and tell them that they've been killed in a car crash is bad enough, but to think that they're never ever going to be given that opportunity to say goodbye and be able to touch them again or hug them again.
Small, 5 foot nothing, strong-willed, strong-minded, strong in general, to be honest. Brought me up pretty much by herself up until I was about 7 when she met my dad, my stepdad. He sort of took me on as his own son, gave me the key to the world really. He took me on holiday, he took me to football games and did everything you would want from a dad. My wife came in sort of early in the morning, 5, 6ish, something like that, and she handed me the phone, and on the other end of the phone was a dad, and then he told me that initially my mum had been involved in a car accident and had died, and then he told me my dad had also been killed. Yeah, it's pretty bad, and you don't know if you've never had to go through this process before. You've never had to plan funerals, you've never had to do all that sort of stuff. You just deal with it however you deal with it. I don't think there's certainly no right or wrong answer, but I don't know if there's a way of explaining it. You just kind of got to muddle on.
It's weird, like I, in a weird way, feel guilty. That it's just sheer luck that I was as far down the road as was, and other families are having to grieve for their loss, and it just doesn't seem fair.
Most importantly is to make sure you're getting the treatment that you need for your injuries, which are at the moment just what we can see.
She had a foil blanket wrapped around her. Obviously explained that she was involved in the collision as well, and that she was pregnant at the time as well. And
well, the day it happened, I was 26 weeks pregnant, never had any worries or anything like that, but then obviously after it happened, that flipped completely, and it was just every day paranoid that something was wrong.
How far along are you?
26 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely essential. You check.
I was just extremely thankful that she was okay. No one wants to see anyone die as a result of a collision on the road, but especially someone who's pregnant. Yeah, that would have been heartbreaking.
Very, very luckily, she was absolutely fine. But that again, that could have been so different.
You know, we're humans as well, and we have feelings. Although you've got to have a bit of a game face.
Do us a favour, see that FedEx truck's got CCTV in the cab.
Are you alright?
I'm alright.
We'll be fine now because we're task focused at the minute.
Yeah, I know.
You do have to focus because you're there to do a job, and people have expectations about you, but you do take a minute and step back and think, you know, this could be my family. This could be me.
The guy over there who's been trapped by them is the driver of this wagon.
This one here?
Yeah, Eon somebody. I've got his name, I've got his details.
It was identified that he was the person who was driving the HGV, and given the state of that HGV, the fact it was on its side and it was on fire, and I was quite surprised that he came out of it relatively unscathed.
What happened?
Well, everything happened too fast. Everybody pulled the brakes super fast.
Okay.
Well, not super fast. I didn't have time to react, for such a big machine.
Yeah.
And the next thing I was trying to come this side on the middle,
I think I steered a little bit left, trying to hit another lorry in the front of me. I was hoping to stop his trailer without critical damage, casualties, but
he'd made comments at the scene to say that the traffic had just stopped in front of him and he hadn't had time to stop. The witnesses had told us very early on that it hadn't braked, and it had just ploughed into this stationary traffic. Well, the stationary traffic was there to be seen, and at that point we've got enough suspicion for him to be taken into custody.
How are you?
I'm glad I'm alive.
Yeah, I bet you are. Thank you. A bit of a scary situation, was it?
I didn't know to what extent he knew what damage he'd caused at that stage. I didn't know whether he was aware that the people had died as a result of his actions. I think when it was explained to him that he was under arrest on suspicion of death by dangerous driving, I think he'd realised how severe a situation he was in.
The time's 18:59 and you're under arrest for causing death by dangerous driving, all right? You do not have to say anything but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned, something which you later rely on in court, and anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand everything that I've said?
Absolute devastation. I could see by his face, just the shock, the disbelief about what had happened.
Obviously he had the knowledge at that time that it was because he was on his mobile phone that crash had happened. And how that would have played on his mind, I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't imagine that he would be comfortable in that knowledge.
Have you got your mobile phone with you at the moment? Could I take that from you, please?
Of course I knew my phone was in my pocket, and I knew it's going to come up. If people get involved in accidents and people die, you can't hide that. It was a bad choice, really bad choice.
We were a number of days in the investigation when finally our digital unit that were able to access the phone and forensically examine the phone came to us to say that for the proportion of that day, whilst he'd been driving, he'd been on his mobile phone.
Okay, Nico, this interview is being audio and video recorded. The time by now, which is 12:01 p.m, and the date is Wednesday, the 15th of September 2021.
We gathered all our evidence by then. We knew that he'd been on his mobile phone. We had CCTV that we needed to show to him, and it was during that interview that when I pressed play on the laptop for him to see what had happened. He was completely and utterly broken.
So like I say, we've got some footage. This is a compilation of 3 or 4 different bits of dash cam. I'm just going to let it play through. This is different bits.
When I seen the videos, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just something so disturbing. Knowing it was me plowing through the cars.
He's watching a video of himself kill 3 people. It can't have been easy. But on the other hand, it was going to happen. That was a collision waiting to happen.
I was devastated because when I'd arrested him and the way that he reacted, I felt heartily sorry for him on the night. And then to find out the cause of the accident, I felt a bit embarrassed because this might sound awful, but I don't think he necessarily deserved us to feel sorry for him.
Given the carnage at the scene, given the loss of life, the fact that he decided to use his mobile phone whilst he's driving a HGV is unforgivable from my point of view, and I can't get my head around why anyone would think that would be acceptable.
I was so angry when I found that out because I'm like, people have died.
Ambulance have been on. We want to know how many casualties we have that'll need attention. If we can get sort of like a rough idea, so I can pass it on to them, please. In all honesty, at this moment in time, I don't know.
And I think about it a lot because I couldn't imagine how he must feel, like knowing that you've killed 3 people for something so stupid. Like, I don't know how he can sleep at night.
I didn't plan to do any harm. I didn't plan to, it was just another day in my work, but just, it didn't meant to be like this, I'm so sorry.
I have no doubt he didn't set out on his day to go and kill some people, but he's made a conscious choice to use his mobile phone to do whatever he was doing. That's frustrating. Ultimately, it makes no difference in the grand scheme of things. Neither of them can be brought back, but I think, yes, he's in prison now and he's got to think of it every day, but he had a wife and child, and his 13-year-old daughter has now got to live with the fact that her dad's killed 3 people and injured and affected countless more people's lives by doing something that was completely avoidable.
I had to understand my life is never going to be the same again. I have to pay for my mistakes. Away from the real world and friends and family. I never had a chance to apologize, to say sorry to anybody who they lost their loved ones. People that are injured and they have to suffer with backflashes and injuries for the rest of their lives. It's hard. It's really hard to accept that. Plus, living for the rest of your life with that in your head is not easy either.
Ultimately, it's a small prison sentence compared to the lifetime of heartache and grief that the family of the 3 loved ones have got.
You look at a picture that they're in on our wall, and one little boy will look up and he'll say, "Oh, who's that?" or whatever, and you've kind of got to explain that to him, and he's too young to understand, really.
There's a lot that I'm still putting up with. I still lose sleep over it. I still have nightmares about it when I do finally get to sleep. I'm very good at just kind of putting in a little box, and I'll be like, I'll deal with that later, I'll deal with it later, and then it just comes out from time to time.
I don't think people think about the what ifs going at speed along the road. And it only takes you to take your eyes off the road for 1 second for something like this to happen.
I think the only way to change people's behaviour is educating them on their not only the dangers but the impact that it can have on other people's lives, and also sort of how easy these sort of things can happen, and that they can happen to anyone. So
I don't think people see the consequences, and because it maybe hasn't happened to them, because they haven't felt the full effect of it, they can't see what it's doing to people.
I don't think anybody would subconsciously say, "Oh well, I'm a good driver so I can look at my mobile phone while I'm driving." I think it's just a habit.
Probably have that attitude of, "Oh, it won't happen to me," but it could happen to you, and it's not just you that you need to think about. I wasn't on my phone. I'm assuming none of the other victims were on their phone. Like, we all managed to stop in time for the traffic. So why do you think you can do it? You could be that person who ultimately takes someone's life, or multiple people's lives in this case.
Like, look what you've done. Like, that momentary decision to look at your phone, look at what you've done.